occupational therapy assistants play a vital role within the profession of occupational therapy. Today on the show, I'm excited to bring on Dave Merlo. Dave is an occupational therapy assistant, a professor at an OTA program, and a member of the American Occupational Therapy Association Board of Directors. He shares a glimpse into his career and how he has found success going outside the traditional therapy roles. If you're interested in occupational therapy, this is the place for you. This show aims to explore our profession by sharing who we are and what we do. Because for us, occupational therapy is more than just a job. Hi, I'm Sarah. Welcome to OT for Life. Hi, Dave. How's it going?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here.
I have been really looking forward to this chat with you. And you've got a lot going on, lots of experience and different kind of aspects of your career that's kind of all just intertwined together. And I want to know, what do you think has been one of the most influential moments of your career?
Most influential moments? Whoa. There are numerous responses to the question. Probably one of the greatest things is going to Haiti. That exposed me to a completely different world in the sense that different language, different culture, different in norms. It's an experience that challenged my assumptions about life and pretty much everything, life and just existence. So that's a pretty broad response, giving a very specific point in time.
And when was the first time that you went to Haiti?
Oh my goodness. Probably, I'm guessing about 5 years ago it's been now. Yeah, and that was a chance happening because part of my work as an occupational therapy assistant and an educator is going to conferences and meeting people. I had a chance opportunity that came upon me by an educator from another part of the country that asked if I might have an extra bed in my hotel room at the AOTA conference in Chicago. I said, sure, why not? I'm up for meeting somebody. And so I shared my room with somebody. And that's when I met my friend Bergson, who is an occupational therapist. He actually grew up in Haiti, immigrated to the U.S. And, I just got to know him. It was a very intriguing interaction, spending a few days with him. And he told me about this work that he was doing there, where he started a nonprofit with his wife, setting up a medical clinic, rehab facility, and other efforts over in Haiti. And I was just so drawn in by that. And I said, I would love to visit there someday. And that never left me. And it happened. A lot of times you say things, oh, I want to do this. Yeah, sure. And you kind of part ways and you never see each other again. But it just got planted in me. And I made the trip. And I actually went with my daughter, who later went back to school to become an occupational therapy assistant herself. And we went over there for a week. And it was amazing. It was just amazing.
I can draw so many parallels with my first time that I got exposed to even the idea of doing international volunteer work. And it was something that I wanted to do, but I just never knew how to do it. And I kind of had something similar where I actually just met somebody at a wedding and they were going to Ecuador. And I was like, I'm going to go with you. Yeah. And it's one of those moments that's like, it's so chance in that happening. But then all of a sudden it's almost like that was meant to be, because I'm sure it's brought so much to your life and your career, and just so much about what you're doing now all kind of stems from that experience and your first experience in Haiti.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually caused some pause in me as well, because I had to think about, why was I going to do this? I'm taking time, I'm taking money, out of my own savings to do this. And is it worthwhile to do that? And even up to the point of hopping on an airplane, I question that. And I still question that, because quite honestly, I do have a lot of questions about kind of volunteerism and, all on the outside. It sounds really good. And a lot of what we do in the U.S. is when we do something that's of a charitable nature, we like to share our stories, which is great. But sometimes in the process of sharing the stories, there's kind of a theme running in the background that I don't know if it's the best message to convey. Because when we volunteer to help others, that's charity. It kind of puts people in interesting roles and perspectives. And I went there not as conscious as I came back of this idea of the wealthy, benevolent American going over to save the poor, primitive people of Haiti. And it's taken me a long time going through volunteering over there a couple of times to begin to realize that I have a lot of work to do to shed some of my assumptions and attitudes, because I don't want to be that benevolent, privileged person going to Haiti and then taking pictures of little Haitian children holding them and posting it on Facebook and looking like, aren't I a wonderful person? I'm embarrassed to say that I did that initially, but I've actually gone back and taken down pictures after I started to really think a little bit more deeply about my own motivations to try to self-correct. But I look at that as really part of my own learning and the benefit that I've gained from that experience, really to look at a fellow human being as just that. I'm certainly privileged. I've come from a land of opportunity in the U.S., and so I don't take that for granted. I do recognize the privilege that I have. So I've been learning to take a little bit more of an introspective look at myself, because I don't want to come across as being that savior. That does no good.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because being that I've done a lot of volunteer work myself, it is something that I have been thinking about, reflecting about, and really becoming more and more aware of it myself. When I initially started volunteering, I just thought, hey, I'm going to go and I'm going to help and I'm going to do the best that I can.
Yeah.
And it actually wasn't until after I got back from my first trip that I was telling somebody, and I got just this complete wave of negativity from them. Why are you doing this? You're taking jobs from locals. You're putting on a Band-Aid. Who do you think you are? And it it hit me hard. And I'm actually glad it happened, because it made me think, and it really made me reflect on why it is that I am doing, why I'm choosing to go do this stuff. But then also my approach going forward when I go do more trips. And I think a lot of people want to get into international volunteer work, or just volunteer work in general, and might not necessarily, they might not think that what they're doing could be perceived as negative, but there's, I hate to say it, but there is a lot of negativity that stems around this topic of volunteering, and especially when you are going internationally.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I wish we could incorporate a mandatory orientation that just prepares people to get in the right headspace to do this. I have a really strange story, and it kind of relates to this being put in the position of the passive recipient of charity. And it might sound a little out there, but bear with me. Years ago, I was in my town where I lived. We were victims of a tragedy where there was a commercial airline that crashed right in our little hamlet, and it was a terrible thing. This plane literally came out of the sky on a winter night, crashed, blew up. 50 people died, and people were, obviously very traumatized by that. But what happened is the disaster response that occurred, they kind of sequestered our little hamlet right there. And because at the time they didn't know if this was a terrorist attack or whatever. But what happened is volunteers from all over the place came into our village. And it was interesting that they did not allow the people that lived in our village to really join in and help in any way. So our hands were tied, and we were essentially victims. People were traumatized by this. So seeing volunteers come in with this sense of charity, wanting to reach out to people and, oh, you poor this and that, it was angering. It was actually angering. My children, again, because it was essentially viewed as a crime scene initially early on. And for your reference, or anybody that's listening, it was Continental Flight 3407. You'll Google it and you'll find videos of it. And I remember whoever, Red Cross or whoever, allowed volunteers to come in. There was this little girl and mother walking down the street and knocking on people's doors, handing out cookies that they had made. So they felt very good, very charitable, having baked the cookies, and the mom probably prepped the daughter to do this. We're going to go help these poor people. But my children who lived in that same neighborhood days before, when they just attempted to cross the street to visit their friend's house because the kids were home from school, and literally the village was sequestered, the police came running after my kids because they thought that they were people coming on the crime scene to look at things, and they scared my kids and this and that. So it was just so odd to be treated like an incapable victim when volunteers were coming in who they obviously they felt good in what they were doing. And it just, I don't know, it left me with a very sick feeling. I wanted to be helping my own community, but people who lived there were treated differently because they lived there, I guess. I don't know. But they had specially appointed volunteers that had some kind of privilege to be able to come in and help out. So that gave me the sense of what it might be like to be a person in Haiti. And, God knows that they need help there. They do have a lot of needs there. But to always be the recipient of charity has got to do a number on your psyche. So I'm sensitive to that.
So how do you feel like your personal experience with being on the receiving end of charity has impacted the work that you do when you are the one offering up services or trying to help out?
It makes me very cautious of my own motives, and ever present of that. A lot of it is really attitude adjustment. I'm there to do a job. I'm not a hero. I get as much out of it. I mean, if you look at the gains in doing stuff like this, it's a great resume booster. I mean, and certainly I don't blame anybody that would do it just for that. It's fun to travel. I'm very sensory seeking, so I love seeing novelty. I love seeing different cultures and places. So it really feeds my my desires, greatly. I get a lot out of it. So I'm reminding myself constantly, I ain't no hero. This is just a cool thing to do. I was just talking with somebody today about, like vacations and stuff like that. The most boring vacation I could think of is like going to Hawaii and sitting on a beach for a week. I would be bored to death. But to go to another country, visit another culture and taste their food and look at how their routines and their occupations and their food and their drink, that is so cool. I love it. So I get so much out of it that, I'm not even thinking about doing any kind of great charity work. Because the reality is, for the money and time involved in sending yourself to another country, you could just as easily take that money and just donate it to an organization over there. And you could buy a lot of food for a lot of people, or you could put that money towards buying a vehicle or a car or this or that. I've questioned that as well. And I've had that conversation with many people as well.
Oh, yeah. So much of what you're bringing up are things that I've encountered too. People are like, why don't you just volunteer in your own backyard? There's so much that needs to be done here in the States.
Yes.
Why don't you just give money rather than giving your time? Like all these things that people are constantly, they're asking me. But then again, it makes me reflect of like, why am I doing this and what am I getting out of it? But more importantly, what are the communities and the people that I'm working with? What are they getting out of me being there? And I'm such a big proponent of it's the education piece. I can go and great work, but I want to go and educate the local professionals. If there are OTs, if there aren't OTs, whether it's PTs, whether it's teachers, whether it's doctors, whatever it is, as well as parents and caregivers, educate them to empower them with the skills so they can then become their own OTs and to continue to help their own communities even when I'm not there. It's not just me. I'm really just trying to empower the individuals in their communities to help them.
And that's kind of, I guess, a vision that I have, because even the organization that I've gone over with, they bring crews of people over and they do kind of mobile clinics. And even that is it for the money and time spent. They're going out and for the most part, and they'll go out into a village and there'll be 100 people lined up. And for most of those people, they're minor issues. They got a cold or they got a cut or this or that. And they're doing some very basic stuff that, you give them some aspirin and they're on their way. It's not doing much to change the world in that sense. My whole reason for doing this, the only reason I'm going over there really, well, it started out is I made a friend, my friend who's from Haiti. And in getting to know my friend and sharing in his interests and his passions, really that's what hooked me into it, is a friendship. And I want to support my friend because he came from there. And, he's a great human being, and he's very generous. And I've learned so much from him. And I just want to be a part of what he's doing. I just think it's really cool. So it's really a very personal thing. And I think that was a good hook for me. If somebody out there is thinking, oh, I want to volunteer in another country, I'm not sure what advice I would give them regarding that, because for me personally, it all started with a relationship with a friend and wanting to support my friend in what he's doing. I would challenge people to think about it if they're going to do something like that. Think about your own reasoning. Be realistic about what you're going to get out of it and what you're going to give. Quite honestly, again, the money and time, it's a drop in a bucket. And some people would argue that it's not worth it, and that could be money better spent elsewhere. But the more and more I've gotten involved in what I'm doing over there, it's growing. And it's going along the lines of some of what you've talked about in terms of sustainability and having a further and deeper reach in a community. My vision is to really use international volunteerism as a learning tool for health and rehab students, emerging to become professionals, because I think that the profound impact that brings on a person in their own lives and what they do thereafter is great. And yes, it's going to be a drop in the bucket what they do over there. But if we create, and this is what I want to do with my friend in Haiti, is if I can create something that's sustainable, that's bringing people over on a regular basis, those drops add up to buckets. So my hope is I want to create an ongoing experience, in particular for OT and PT, OTA and PTA students, to have a life-changing experience where they could put a couple drops in that bucket over there, which is over time is going to help and create something that's sustainable there. But then in their own personal lives and going forward, it's going to be life-changing. It's going to have an impact in their own. So that's what I'm hoping to do.
Yeah, I was actually just listening to a podcast all about global health today, and that was exactly it. And they were talking a lot about potentially having it as a component. And I know a lot of schools do some international volunteer work, but actually making it something that most students should do, because I know it's not going to be for everybody, but really kind of challenging us as students and us as practitioners to think outside of ourselves and just be exposed to things that are foreign to us and that are different than what we're grown up with, and just causing us to think outside of just our own little bubble. And from that lens, I can see it being so beneficial to be bringing students over there and practitioners alike, because it really does. It brings that awareness piece, and it's not easy. And that's what I mean. Like, it's not, doing international volunteer work is not for everybody. It's very hard. It's hard emotionally. It's hard physically. It's hard. There are so many things that it's very, very challenging, but it really gives, at least for me, it's given me this different perspective of how I go about my professional role, how I work with clients, whether I'm in Peru or in Ecuador or I'm in Los Angeles. Like, it has really had this influence on me as a practitioner in just countless ways.
It really does open your eyes. And I think what opens somebody's eyes is seeing something that's so different that you have to take notice. So you look at, and my mom is in a nursing home, and you look at the aides and the nurses and rehab people coming in and out. It's easy to forget that elderly person is a human being with a whole history, that was probably a very successful, maybe career person or a mother years ago, because what we see in front of us is a very frail person that is not able to, they're incontinent and they can't dress themselves and they have really bad breath because they have poor oral hygiene, and we just kind of don't want to deal with them. And for some reason, we almost get away with that because it becomes such an everyday part of our jobs and our routines. So having an experience that is so radical, different culture, different language, different environment, different food, different laws, different everything. It shocks you into realizing that people are different. And I'm noticing this person. I'm noticing what this person goes through every day. I'm very sensitive to that. So having gone through that kind of shock through immersion, if it lasts, and I this is where the education part comes, and I really hope to be able to prepare students to go over there, but then debrief in a way that they leave with some basic principles, a few basic principles, so that when they go back and they're working every day, day in and day out in a SNF or, an institutional setting, and they're dealing with those same people over and over and over again, they're going to realize, I got to realize that this is a unique human being with unique values and stories, and they have value, distinct value. And I have to think about that, That's what happened to me and is still happening. Again, I think about it every day because I'm dealing with it. I'm interacting with my friend he just came back from over there, but it's just a constant reminder. And I tend to think a lot and talk a lot. I probably have something diagnosable maybe in terms of thinking too much or whatever, but
I think that's just our mentality as OTs. We just tend to think about everything and overthink about everything, relationships and environment and people and occupations. And yeah, because I'm the same way.
I definitely hope that just comes with the package of being an OT practitioner. I don't feel so alone then in my insanity.
Oh no, I'm right there with you.
Okay, good to know.
I know you had kind of touched on the education piece.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to share a little bit more, because I know that you have started, or at least the team that you're with, you guys have started working with a local university.
Yeah. So I'm a program director of an occupational therapy assistant program. And typically OTA education focuses on preparing students for a local, a region. Typically the students that come to an OTA program live in that particular area, and they're expecting to graduate and get jobs in their own local community. So there's not a lot of OTA programs that do a lot of international stuff. So I thought that if I could link up with a university that's interested in doing that and take the relationships I built over in Haiti, that if I can get them excited about doing some kind of international program, then I can tag on to that and I can go. So, yeah. So, and then if I got that going, maybe my institution would think, oh, this looks cool. This is already an existing program. Maybe we can open up the door for students in our institution to participate in that. And so I have a colleague at a university who is very interested. In fact, she went over last year. We went over just to kind of explore it together, and she's totally on board. In fact, our plan was to have our first trip this spring, and we ended up canceling that because there was a lot of political unrest in Haiti, and things are just now settling to the point where people are feeling comfortable traveling over there. So for a number of months, and again, I want to make Haiti look bad because it's a beautiful country, beautiful people, but there was some civil unrest regarding the way their government is handling some things. So people were upset. So we had to step back and let them figure that out.
Well, and I actually think that can be pretty common. I've had it happen I've never been to Haiti, but I've been to multiple other places. And there have been times that it could be political unrest, but there's also been time of weather. There was the first time I was supposed to go to Peru, there was massive, severe flooding. And they were like, you guys could get here, but you might not be able to get out. And it got to I want to say maybe a month before we left. And there was a big chance that we weren't going to go. So there's always that chance that something could come up that might influence your either safety or even just your accessibility to be able to get there. Or you might be able to get there, but then your client won't be able to get to where you are.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I even hesitate to share that because I'm very concerned about people's impression, because especially in America, you hear about one news event in a country and that kind of casts a very dark shadow and creates an impression about that whole country. And there's no question there was some civil protesting going on in Haiti. I mean, if you were from outside of the U.S. looking at the U.S. and you heard all the news about these mass shootings and bombings, you would think it is a dangerous place, that United States. So I just want to be very careful about what references I make towards Haiti. Conan O'Brien, he had this series, it's on Netflix, where he has gone to different countries, and he produced like a half-hour show. And he's just so funny. But he did one episode in Haiti after Trump made that derogatory statement about Haiti. So Conan O'Brien went over there and he filmed. And in fact, I will show that film to students as part of an orientation to visit Haiti. He did more to present idiosyncrasies with their language and their culture. He presented, and Conan O'Brien is so absurd and a little dirty in his humor, and it's just absolutely hilarious. But what he presented was a country of really decent people, resilient people for sure. I mean, they've had to pursue through a lot of natural disasters and stuff in recent years. But what he presented was a very positive, beautiful view of a country that otherwise was referred to as by some derogatory term.
I want to thank you for bringing up that point, because I think it's really, really important. And if you have not been to a country or a city or a place, and you talk to somebody that has, or you hear from somebody in the news that they're talking about it, and you hear whatever it is, what they say, whether it's good, whether it's bad, it almost paints that picture of what you're going to experience when you get there.
Yeah.
And I hate when people ask me for my opinion on places, especially when I have to say like, hey, it's not my favorite place, because everyone's going to connect to that place differently. And they might love it when I hate it, or vice versa. And so I hate when people just kind of take that face value of, oh, it's unsafe. Oh, there's this going on. Oh, it's dirty. Oh, whatever the reason is, without even actually experiencing it or doing their own research on the place. And so, yeah, like, just thank you for bringing up that point, because it's up to us to make our own assumptions and our own views of places that we've gone to, and not just take what other people are saying.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to take people's advice. There's rough neighborhoods in Haiti. There's rough neighborhoods in the U.S. There's great restaurants in Haiti, and there's great restaurants in the U.S. There's crummy restaurants in Haiti.
We got them too.
And yeah.
So when you're not in Haiti and you're back here, I know you mentioned that you work at a university. Like, what other things are you up to these days? Because I feel like you got a lot on your plate.
Well, I am currently on AOTA Board of Directors, so I'm a director on the board there. I just got back last night from D.C. I'm also the board president of a mental health agency in Buffalo. It's a community mental health agency where we work with individuals with severe mental illness. So they've had diagnosed with schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, and there's some severity to that it really impacts their lives. Many of those individuals are also struggling with or living with being homeless, underemployed. So our agency works to help people to get real jobs in the community, to set them up with real, living places, not group homes, not supervised residences, but getting their own apartment, helping people to develop their resumes, helping people to develop wellness strategies to keep themselves well. It's an agency that staffed significantly by people who themselves have experienced, they have lived experiences of a mental illness. So I do that. What else am I doing? I'm a member of the OT Leaders and Legacies Society. So that's a club for old OT people that don't know what to do with themselves. So part of that, I was on. We have a committee that's working on developing the first National Honor Society for Occupational Therapy Assistants. So we're hoping to get that launched. So it's all really fun stuff.
Yeah,
really fun stuff.
It sounds like it. And again, I think that's another trait of OT practitioners, is that we tend to like potentially start with one thing, and then as soon as we get like comfortable and good with that, then we like add another thing, and then we add another thing, whether it's a training or you add on all these other things. And I feel like so many practitioners that I talk to have so much going on, and I look at that and I'm like, how do you even have time in your day to accomplish all of what you just said?
It happens. I do think that, and maybe in part it's just my own thinking, because I'm right now I'm teaching a class on lifespan development, and I really love Eric Erickson's model that talks about those stages of psychosocial development. So I just turned 60 last May, and that kind of puts me just between, the tail end of generativity versus isolation, and I'm just starting to move into dignity versus despair. So this idea of generativity is a big theme for me. And Erickson talks about that as, in adulthood, generativity, thinking of the next generation. It's kind of when we stop kind of thinking about ourselves and worrying about or working towards supporting the next generation. And most humans do that by, maybe getting married or having a partnership and maybe having children and raising, helping to raise kids. And I've done that. My kids are out of the house. And I guess I needed more. And I think as an educator, that idea of generativity is always in your head, because you're always focusing on preparing that next cohort, that next generation of graduates going out there. So I think that idea of generativity, and I mentioned that I'm on this Leaders and Legacy Society, so that term legacy really rings true for me. I feel like I'm building something. I want to build something before I go out with a bang. It keeps me very active. Hopefully it keeps me young. I am a very poor example of life in balance, though, which is, probably goes against one of our OT principles of being well. Although a friend of mine told me about, and I briefly read an article from the Times that kind of referenced that it's not people that live balanced lives that change the world. It's usually those people whose lives are out of balance that are the people that are changing the world around them. So I'm out of balance. So I confess.
Hey, I'm right there with you, because I feel like I like eat, breathe, sleep OT. I am always thinking about it, whether it's my clinical practice or whether it's my work on the podcast, whether it's talking to all my OT buddies. Like I'm I'm always doing something. And even if I am engaging in an occupation, then I'm thinking about it from an occupational therapy lens and how I would adjust it. And it
Okay,
never
so
stops.
let me ask you a question. Job or career?
It's my life. I don't even know. I can't even say that. Like it literally is my life, and I feel so fortunate that I stumbled into this profession that is my job and is my career. That is also something that I am just so passionate about. Like look at the name of my podcast. It's OT for life. Like
That is true. So I asked the question because I was thinking about everything I do. They all connect. Whether it's be, going to Haiti or working with the AOTA board of directors or being on a board of directors, my agency in Buffalo, all those things connect, as well as my job, as well as what I read or watch in movies. So I asked career versus job. So I had looked those definitions up, and career is a pursuit of a lifelong ambition. And a job is an activity through which an individual earns money. And so definitely OT is a career. It's a big part of my identity and my purpose for being in life. And I don't know if all of our students and practitioners enter OT with the idea of it becoming a career. Although I talk to them as if they view it as a career and not a job, because it's not about the income. In fact, I do more work without pay than I do with pay. I don't want my boss to hear that, but I do work and I do my job. I earn my living at my job, but it definitely spills over, and I'm really comfortable with that. I like that. I would encourage people who are going into the profession, I suppose you can compartmentalize it as a job, but don't be afraid to let it spill over because it really can add to your life. For me, to go to Haiti is vacation. For me, to go to AOTA conference is vacation. I would rather go to a conference than go sit on a beach. So I would want to encourage people to not be afraid and don't look at everything as a job. Am I getting reimbursed for this? Because everything I've done, honestly, it's not just because I'm a giving person. It's for me too. I gain so much from every part of what I'm doing. I've built my resume around volunteer things that I do, and that adds to my people knowing me out there, and that's cool. Oh, I'm doing all this other. I'm working on with another group. We're starting a scholarly journal for. I'm very much involved in mental health and the model of psychiatric rehabilitation. So our plan is to eventually develop a scholarly journal on workforce development, developing the workforce, future practitioners to work in community mental health. So the journal is going to be dedicated to best teaching and training practices around preparing people to work in those sectors. So that was another little project that I'm working on as well, or a part of. We have a little piece in that. But it's really fun stuff.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm sitting here just kind of smiling and laughing because I've been called out on it before, because when I go on quote unquote vacation, I don't go on vacation, and I am always like reaching out. Like I just did this when I was in Europe. I reached out to some of the international delegates within like WOOFIT. And I went and I gave a presentation in Portugal, and I went to one of the colleges in Estonia, and everyone's sitting there like, it's really cool to have you here, and we're happy that you're here, but shouldn't you just be out enjoying like sightseeing and just, enjoying your time, going out to dinner? And I'm like, what I was doing in that moment, those were some of the best parts of my entire trip, because I connected with local occupational therapy practitioners, students, faculty. I got a taste of what OT looks like in other countries, which is something that I'm super just interested in learning about. And yeah, everyone looks at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, no, this is what fuels me. And this is really what lights me up inside. But yeah, I don't want to go sit on a beach unless I'm surrounded by other OTs and I'm learning from them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know what that says about both of us. Either we're out there or what. I don't know.
I don't know. Hey,
a couple of deviants.
Yeah. I don't mind. I honestly, I don't mind. I can talk OT all day. And maybe that's one of the reasons that I started a podcast. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that you and I connected so well when I met up with you. We can just talk about this all day long.
Bring it in. Part of one of the ideas that fuels me and has compelled me in my activities, volunteering with AOTA is I've been an occupational therapy assistant for over 36 years. I pursued OT really as a means to an end. When I first started, first time I went to college, I was not a good student. I was just a naughty boy, and I didn't really work as I should have on getting good grades. So barely graduated and washed dishes for a number of years. And I was living in the city in Buffalo, and beautiful old Buffalo Psychiatric Center, this beautiful old asylum. Just, as we talk in our intro to OT classes with our students about the era of moral treatment. This is one of those institutions that was built to be one of those asylums. In fact, the grounds of the institution were designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, who at the time was the famous landscape architect. He's credited to his design of Central Park in New York City. He's designed parks and parkways in other cities as well. So he designed the institution grounds with the intent of using the landscape, the environment, as part of the therapy, the milieu. So anyhow, my previous degree was actually in landscape design. I had hoped to become a landscape architect, but that didn't last. So I volunteered with the patients over there. working in this beautiful old Victorian greenhouse that was eventually it was demolished, but it was absolutely gorgeous. And I just volunteered. I didn't know anything. I just went over there and worked with people that were on the locked wards. They would bring them down, and we would just hang out, growing plants, taking cuttings, watering the plants, repotting them. It was really just laid back, no pressure. And what I noticed is the patients would always come. And we didn't talk much. Most of the conversation was about what to do and where to put the pots and how to do that. But it was just a chill environment. The patients really enjoyed coming down there. It was quiet. That you could hear the fan in the background, that kind of drone sound. On a sunny day after you water all the plants, it would be sparkling inside with all these droplets of water. So it was really beautiful. It smelled this rich earth smell, that humid smell. And that's what turned me on to a career in helping people. And that's when I began to explore. And I happened to bump into somebody on the community college campus who was a student in the OTA program. She told me about it, and I thought, that's it. It's perfect. Because it had that whole design thing, because I wanted to go be a landscape architect, landscape designer, and it had that helping aspect, and it wasn't nursing, and it wasn't social work, because I had ruled those out, because I don't want to deal with bedpans, and I don't want the salary of a social worker. So I went for school for that, and that's where I started my profession. So why am I saying all that? Going back to this OT and OTA thing. OTAs have been around for 60 years. The reason OTAs were invented was to fill a significant gap in the workforce. We needed to quickly and effectively meet the needs, in particular at the time in the psychiatric institute. And we did it. We did it quite effectively. We created academic programs to prepare students. It wasn't a couple years later that they started academic programs around that. But that's where the idea of OTs and OTAs working collaboratively took off. And it was a very efficient model. And we've persisted. And unless somebody wants to stand up and say we don't need OTAs anymore, we're here to stay. And I think OTs are worth their weight in gold, especially as OTs are, if ever, get rid of master's degrees and move to doctoral degree only for OTs. OTs really need to be worth their weight in gold. And part of that worth is how effective are they in utilizing workforce to do the job cost effectively. And again, that speaks of occupational therapy assistants. When the Affordable Care Act came about, the term affordable care, that maybe, depending on what party is in power, maybe that won't last, but the idea of affordable care is never going to go away. The OTA collaborative workforce model should be, in my mind, one of the most promoted benefits of our profession. To have OTs and OTAs together in the same association, to have curriculums designed to reflect and complement each other through one accrediting body, that's all great stuff. But we got to speak about it more as we move more and more into community-based approaches, population health, prevention services, wellness services. We're continually talking about finding alternative sources of funding. We need to be able to do services in a more cost-effective manner, and that's with an OTA workforce. So I want to compel American Occupational Therapy Association to be thinking about that, which is why I pursued my role to be on their board of directors, and I previously served on their representative assembly. I want to compel them to think about that. I want to compel practitioners out there, both OTs and OTAs, to think about that collaboration. I don't want people to think of OTAs as just having a job. OTAs have just as much opportunity to make a career out of this as anybody. I made a career out of this. I'm still an OTA. And another little secret, I have never worked in an OT clinic a day in my life. So, oh my gosh, how could I be teaching? How could I be a program director of a OTA program? How can I be on the board of directors of our profession? And this is where you talk about outliers or positive deviants. I made a career out of working in non-traditional settings before the term non-traditional was a term. Why? Because I wasn't interested in OT, as I said earlier, was a means to my end. I was so touched and moved working with those individuals who were lifelong patients of a mental institution. They were the products of institutionalization. I was so moved by them. And I was haunted by that, what I saw. And that just compelled me. And it just, I don't know why, but I've always had this interest in the disenfranchised people of society, homeless people and stuff like that. So I was just so moved by that's what I wanted to have a career in. For me, OTA was the most relevant, cost-effective, quickest way of doing that. It got me a foot in the door. I worked in community-based settings. Everything I did involved focusing on occupation and in engaging people in meaningful roles and occupations. It was OT. There's no question about it in my mind, but it was not within the context of a clinic. It wasn't billed, in mental health, they, especially community mental health, they don't bill things in the same way. You don't need to hire people with a specific credential to do specific things. It's very, what we call transdisciplinary. So I thrived in that environment and I loved what I did. And because I loved it, that contributed to me being good at it. And I moved up and I was promoted and I, worked my way up. So I had no interest in going back to becoming an OT. A lot of times people ask that question of an OTA, oh, do you ever think of going back? Like, that's not enough. Believe me, I've done so much with my OTA degree, and I've gotten a bachelor's in mental health, and I did a graduate program in assistive technology and adult education. But honestly, the foundation was built around my 2 years at a little community college in an OTA program. And great career.
There is so much that you just said right there. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Is this part 2 of your podcast?
Yeah. I'm so happy about what you said about how you just went this non-traditional path and how it worked out. Because I think for me, I'm a fieldwork educator and I'm always trying to push my students. If you have an interest, go do it. If you have a passion in something that revolves around occupational therapy that might not even be in existence or is just getting off the ground, go do it. You don't have to stick to the box. You don't have to stick to that traditional medical model. I really try to instill this passion to go and just challenge yourself and do different things out there. And so I love that you just shared that about you, because you're living proof that you can go and do things in the unconventional way, or maybe just the way that people aren't expecting you to go into, and have a very successful career and enjoy what you're doing. And I think that is so motivating. That's so inspiring for me to hear. And yeah, I think that's so cool.
OTAs can do anything. They can do really anything. And yeah, certainly going back to become an OT is a reasonable, respectable pathway. But yeah, you can do anything. I love collaborating with OTs. And, my stuff in Haiti, I'm collaborating with an OT. An article, I collaborated with the OT from Ithaca College, developing an international fieldwork program. I collaborated with somebody from University at Buffalo. Done some collaborative stuff on doing institutes at AOTA on training people. We did a day-long institute a couple years ago on the model of psychiatric rehabilitation. I got to work with people from BU, one of the top universities in the country regarding psychiatric rehabilitation, for one thing, but also their OT program. Rutgers University, some of the top people in psychiatric rehabilitation come out of there, and great research coming out of there. And I got to work with these people. It's cool, absolutely cool. I don't know how I got there. I'm able to do it, but I made it there.
Mm-hmm. And I love the collaboration piece too, because I think a lot of times, at least that I've seen kind of out in practice, there can be tension between occupational therapists and occupational therapy assistants. And some people feel that, one is underrepresented, and there's a lot of just emotions and feelings that I have encountered out in the field. And for me, we're working to help our clients, to help our patients, to help our communities. And really, that act of working together in order to accomplish that goal, that's what it's about. It doesn't really matter what our degree is. We're there to work together and to collaborate. And working together, we can do so much more than just doing it ourselves.
For sure. And I don't know, I've tried to trace I mean, this might just be like a hearsay kind of thing, but we are occupational therapy assistants. And I've heard that compared to the title of our counterpart in PT, physical therapist assistants. And the distinction between occupational therapy versus physical therapist. And again, I would love to find some source that references this, but the idea that we as occupational therapy assistants, we are assisting therapy. We're not just the assistant to a person. Okay. Whereas a physical therapist assistant implies that they are the assistant to the therapist. So I don't know if that's just a fanny fact out there or whatever, but I like that idea. I hope people are taught and indoctrinated in school to think in terms of this collaborative relationship. I think it brings much better outcomes ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. And even looking even grander, physical therapists and speech language pathologists and doctors and nurses, and having that collaboration piece across the board is huge. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that it's something that I always try to instill in my practice, and then also try to showcase that for my students so they get to see it kind of implemented in practice. But
Mm-hmm.
I do hear that there is a lot of that tension out there. And I hope that with having conversations about it and showcasing the importance of working together, I'm hoping that at somewhere down the line, we can really start to just embrace it all and work together rather than, oh, you're this and you're that. Well, this is what I'm supposed to do and that's what I'm supposed to do, and we can't work together. I really hope we can change that.
Well, yeah, and yeah, I don't know what more to say about that other than if anybody feels that way, what you're describing, give them my number or my email address. I would love to share with them to persuade them, not to guilt them out or yell at them or anything, but there's probably some underlying, maybe past experiences where there were maybe competency issues, and certainly, we all need to have service competency, not just the OTA. There may be people working in work environments where there's particular pressures imposed on them, and then they just kind of, there's a trickle down effect because they're under pressure. Or maybe people aren't feeling secure in their own roles, and maybe that should really trigger for them to maybe think, reflect, or maybe talk with a trusted friend or something, because we have to collaborate. It's in our ACOTE standards and academic programs. We have to focus on collaboration. So it's important. It really is, for our patients and our clients and society,
Yeah.
on a population level.
So if people do want to reach out to you,
Mm-hmm.
how can they find you?
Well, I have a website, which is davidmerlo.com. It's Merlo without a T at the end, not the wine. But so that's probably the easiest way. But I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, and you can find me on the AOTA website. If you go to the board of directors, I think there's a link there with my email address. And I'm always really happy to talk with groups and classes. In fact, our AOTA board, we have a cool program. It's called Boardroom to Classroom, where academics can contact AOTA and set up a Skype session to any of their classes, and they'll grab any one of our board members, and we'd be happy to talk about any number of topics. So that's a cool thing too. And I'm hoping they extend that to Boardroom to Clinic as well, so that clinic teams could maybe spend an hour and
Yeah.
maybe they could develop a little in-service training and maybe some CEs around that or something. Who knows? But so I'm available through that, but I'm also trying to push the AOTA classroom to boardroom thing to a little commercial there.
That's awesome. I had not heard about that yet, but I've been out of school for many years now. So, but that's really cool. I love that. And I hope that maybe it can go into clinics and organizations as well. And really just, I think the word is collaboration for
Yeah, yeah,
today, and just continue that collaboration across the board.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I have one more question for you.
Shoot.
If you only had one word to describe occupational therapy, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. Occupational therapy. One word?
Yep. That's it.
Meaning. So I look at all of life as, and again, it's common in our discussion around activities, purposeful activities, and we talk about purpose and meaning. To me, meaning, something is meaningful if it is somehow meets our internal needs and it has some congruence with our values. It's additive to our goals and aspirations. So that's meaningful. Purposeful is, does it satisfy society? Does it fill a void in society? Does it satisfy one of society's needs? So if you were to give me two words, I would have probably said purposeful and meaningful. So to me, OT is personally meaningful to me. It's really given me a theme for my career, in some respects life, but so as a career, it is very meaningful to me. And I think one of the greatest things that we as a profession can do is help the people we serve, whether it be populations or groups or individuals, to help them to derive meaning by finding occupations that are congruent with their values and their aspirations and their goals and their individual needs. So I kind of prioritize the idea of meaning above purpose there, because you limited me to one word. So meaning is my word.
I love it. I think that is a perfect and beautiful word. And I loved your explanation. Well, Dave, this has been so fun and just an awesome conversation. And I feel like there are so many takeaways and so many reflections that I feel like I was able to capture within this conversation with you. And so thank you for coming on the show and taking time out of your busy day.
I was looking forward to this and the conversation. People need to have conversations more, because it helps us to articulate thoughts that sometimes we're not even conscious of those thoughts, and putting ideas together. And it's not through having these conversations, a lot of times, that you begin to see your storyline and the connections of all the people and the places and they kind of land on our timeline. So it's kind of cool.
Hey, before you go, I just wanted to say thanks for listening to today's episode. If you want to further the discussion, go to our website, otforlife.com, and join our Facebook group. If you like us, here are 3 easy ways to let us know. 1, share our podcast with a friend, colleague, or anyone interested in occupational therapy. 2, leave us a review on iTunes or anywhere this podcast is found. 3, subscribe to us so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Thanks again. We'll catch you next time, OT for Lifers.
So I forgot why I'm saying that, because it doesn't seem worthwhile. But kind of forgot where I was going with that. So you're gonna have to give me a second.
No, that's okay.
And
Where to start? I think first, I'm gonna go one, and then we'll circle back to the other piece.
What do you call it? One of those not rumors, but
Is it hearsay? Of course. Now my voice is like, yeah, I know. Like right as I'm about to sign off, it's like, excuse me, hold on. So
we're not almost done, are we?
You got more you want to talk about?
We just got started. No, I'm kidding.
I know.
This is typical, huh? Mm-hmm. You get anybody in OT talking, and they're just, we don't shut up.
Nope, definitely not. Like.
We could talk 3 more hours on that. Too.
I know.
I already have the thoughts going in my head, but I'm gonna
exactly.
I'll keep it in. So
that was fun. Was that fun?
It was terrible. Can we do it again? Can we start again?